Commander Olivia Mason sat in the command chair of the UES Defiant and took a deep breath. This was the moment humanity had been waiting for since they first looked up at the stars and wondered if they were alone in the universe. First contact had happened 3 years ago. Now Earth had received an official invitation to join the Galactic Conclave, a federation of 17 advanced spacefaring civilizations. There was just one catch. They had to prove they belonged. "Status report," Mason said, her voice steady despite the butterflies in her stomach. Lieutenant Greg Hoffman looked up from his console. "All systems normal, Commander. The rest of the fleet is in formation and ready for final jump." Mason nodded. Earth's interstellar fleet consisted of just 7 ships. The Defiant was the largest at 310 meters long. Compared to the massive vessels they had seen in the first contact videos, their ships were tiny. "Open a channel to all ships," she ordered. Greg pressed a few buttons. "Channel open, Commander." Mason straightened in her chair. "This is Commander Mason. In 5 minutes, we will make our final jump to the Conclave meeting point. Remember your training. Remember what we represent. Every human who ever lived has looked up at the stars and dreamed of this moment. We carry their hopes with us," she paused. "No matter what happens today, I am proud to serve with each of you. Mason out." Admiral Paul Richards appeared on her private screen. "Nice speech, Olivia." "Thanks, Paul. Are you nervous?" The Admiral smiled. "Terrified. But Chief Engineer Wright assures me our little surprise will work perfectly." Mason glanced at the time. 3 minutes to jump. See you on the other side." The minutes ticked by slowly. Mason thought about the journey that had brought them here. The discovery of faster-than-light travel. The first probe sent to nearby star systems. The shock when one of those probes returned with an alien message attached to it. "Jump in 10 seconds, Greg announced. Mason gripped her armrests. "Take us in." Space folded around the 7 ships of Earth's fleet. For a brief moment, reality itself seemed to bend. Then they emerged into a vast open area of space. And they were not alone. Hundreds of ships filled the view screen. Some were so large they looked like floating cities. Others resembled strange sea creatures or geometric shapes that hurt the eyes if you stared too long. "My God," Greg whispered. Mason swallowed hard. "Open communications on the frequency provided in our invitation." A moment later, a blue-skinned alien with 4 eyes appeared on the main screen. "Greetings, humans. I am Vex, Secretary of the Galactic Conclave. We welcome you to neutral space." Mason nodded formally. "Thank you, Secretary Vex. I am Commander Olivia Mason of the United Earth Defense Force. We are honored by your invitation." Another alien pushed into view. This one was tall and reptilian with red scales and yellow eyes. "This is your fleet?" the creature asked, mandibles clicking. "These toys?" Mason kept her expression neutral. "This is the United Earth Defense Fleet, yes." The reptilian alien made a strange sound. It took Mason a moment to realize it was laughing. "I am Admiral Kral of the Zoraxian Empire. Our smallest scout ships are 3 times the size of your largest vessel." Other aliens joined in the laughter. Mason felt her cheeks grow warm, but she maintained her composure. "Size isn't everything, Admiral," she replied calmly. This caused even more laughter. The Blue Secretary Vex looked embarrassed. "My apologies, Commander Mason. The Conclave respects all civilizations regardless of their development level." Vex shot a disapproving look at Admiral Kral. "However, it is tradition that new species demonstrate their military capabilities before full membership is granted." Admiral Kral's yellow eyes narrowed. "Yes. Show us what these miniature vessels can do. The galaxy is a dangerous place, humans. The Conclave needs members who can contribute to our collective defense." Mason nodded. "We understand. Earth is prepared to demonstrate our capabilities." Kral made that strange laughing sound again. "Excellent. We have prepared a series of exercises. They will begin tomorrow after your crew has rested." He leaned closer to the screen. "I suggest you prepare yourselves for disappointment. The Zoraxian Empire has vetoed the admission of 12 species whose military technology was lacking. The screen went dark. Mason let out a long breath. Admiral Richards called immediately. Well, that went about as expected. They're underestimating us, Mason said. That could work in our favor. Did you see the size of those ships? Greg asked, his face pale. The Zoraxian dreadnoughts must be at least 5 kilometers long. Mason stood up and looked around the bridge. Every officer was watching her. Yes, their ships are bigger. Yes, they have more of them. But remember this. None of them have faced what humanity has faced. None of them had to overcome the challenges we did. She walked to the main view screen and looked out at the massive alien armada. They see our small fleet and laugh, but they don't know what we're capable of. They don't understand what makes humans different. The door to the bridge slid open, and Chief Engineer Susan Wright entered. She was carrying a tablet and grinning. All systems green across all ships, Commander, she reported. The morphic hull technology is functioning perfectly. All weapon systems are online but dormant as requested, and our countermeasures are detecting multiple scanning attempts already. Mason smiled. Let them scan. They won't understand what they're seeing. Admiral Richards appeared on screen again. The Zoraxians are already spreading rumors among the other species. They're calling us the tiny fleet and taking bets on how quickly we'll fail their tests. Mason's smile grew broader. Good. The higher their confidence, the more surprised they'll be tomorrow. She turned to her crew. Get some rest. Tomorrow, we show the galaxy what humans can do. Later that night, Mason stood alone in her quarters, looking out at the stars. The massive ships of the alien armada glittered like artificial constellations. So many species, so many civilizations, all more advanced than Earth in many ways, but none of them had Earth's history. None of them had faced the unique challenges that forced humans to think differently, to innovate in ways these aliens never considered. They laugh at our tiny fleet, she whispered to herself. By this time tomorrow, they won't be laughing anymore. The next morning, Commander Mason gathered with her senior officers in the Defiance conference room. Admiral Richards joined them by holographic projection from his ship, the UES Valiant. The conclave has sent the details of today's exercise, Richards said, bringing up a 3D display of an asteroid field. They want us to navigate through this field while destroying automated drone targets. Simple enough, but there's a catch. Chief Engineer Susan Wright leaned forward. Let me guess. The asteroid field has some kind of special properties. Richards nodded. High metal content creating sensor interference, and the drones are using stealth technology that makes them difficult to detect until they're almost on top of you. Greg Hoffman, now at Tactical, studied the display. So they want us to fly blind and shoot at shadows. Sounds fun. Mason looked at the assembled officers. They're testing our sensors and our reaction time. They think our small ships will be too slow to respond and too poorly equipped to detect the targets. Susan smiled. They have no idea what's coming. Speaking of that, Mason said, what's our status? Susan pulled up data on her tablet. Morphic hull technology is ready. I've programmed 5 different configuration options specifically for this exercise. The transformation will take approximately 12 seconds from standard to specialized formation. Lieutenant Amy Peters, their navigation officer, raised a hand. I've been studying the asteroid field simulation. If we use configuration 3, we can maneuver through the tightest spots without sacrificing speed. Mason nodded. Excellent. And our weapons? Greg brought up the weapons display. Standard energy cannons until we transform. After that, we deploy the adaptive targeting system. The drones won't know what hit them. Admiral Richards looked pleased. The alien observers will be watching from a safe distance. Remember, this isn't just about completing the exercise. It's about showing them what humanity can do. Mason stood up. Let's give them a show they'll never forget. 2 hours later, the 7 ships of Earth's fleet positioned themselves at the entrance to the asteroid field. Massive observation vessels from various alien species hovered nearby. The field itself was enormous, stretching for thousands of kilometers. All ships report ready, Commander, Greg said. Mason opened a channel to the fleet. This is Commander Mason. We'll proceed as planned. Standard formation until my signal, then execute Transformation Protocol Alpha. Good luck. Secretary Vex's voice came over the comm. The exercise will begin in 30 seconds. Your objective is to destroy at least 60% of the drones while navigating through the field. Previous new species have averaged 45%. Understood, Mason replied. Admiral Krall broke in. I hope your tiny ships are faster than they look, human. These drones were programmed by Xeraxian engineers. Mason smiled to herself. We'll do our best, Admiral. The countdown finished, and a signal flashed on the main screen. The exercise had begun. Move out, standard speed, Mason ordered. The 7 Earth ships moved forward in a basic V formation. They looked clumsy and slow compared to the sleek alien vessels that had run the course before them. On the observation deck of the Conclave flagship, Admiral Krall watched with amusement. Look at them, he said to the other alien representatives. They move like wounded animals. A crystalline being that called itself a luminary hummed softly. Perhaps we should not judge too quickly, Krall. They are new to interstellar travel. Krall snorted. Their technology is primitive. This will be embarrassing for them. Back on the Defiant, Mason watched as the first drones appeared on their sensors. The small, fast-moving objects darted between asteroids, almost invisible until they were dangerously close. 20 drones approaching from multiple vectors, Greg reported, standard weapons struggling to lock on. Mason watched the tactical display. The human ships were firing and occasionally hitting a drone, but many more were slipping past their defenses. Just as Krall had predicted, they looked ineffective and outmatched. On the observation deck, Krall was laughing. As I said, primitive, they can barely... He stopped mid-sentence. Something strange was happening to the human ships. Mason had given the signal. Execute Transformation Protocol Alpha now. All 7 human ships began to change. Sections of hull slid apart, rotated, and reconnected in new configurations. What had appeared to be solid metal was actually made of thousands of smaller components that could move independently. The Defiant's sleek cruiser form shifted into something entirely different. Its hull expanded outward in some places and contracted in others. Weapon ports that had been hidden suddenly appeared. The engines reconfigured, giving the ship much greater maneuverability. Within 12 seconds, the entire human fleet had transformed. Gone was the clumsy V formation. Now they moved like a coordinated swarm, darting between asteroids with incredible agility. On the observation deck, the aliens watched in stunned silence. What is happening? Krall demanded. Their ships. They changed. The luminaries' crystalline body glowed brighter. Fascinating. I have never seen such technology. Mason sat forward in her command chair. All ships engage adaptive targeting and fire at will. The transformed human vessels moved through the asteroid field like fish in water. Their reconfigured hulls were perfectly designed for the environment, slipping through gaps that should have been too narrow. The hidden weapon systems now deployed were specifically designed to counter stealth technology. Drones that had been nearly invisible suddenly found themselves targeted with pinpoint accuracy. The human ships weren't just firing blindly anymore. They were predicting the drones' movements and shooting where they would be. Greg's face lit up as he watched the tactical display. Drone elimination rate at 58% and climbing. We're going to break the record. Susan was monitoring the morphic hull technology. All ships maintaining optimal configuration. Power consumption is within expected parameters. The observation deck, the mood had changed completely. The laughter was gone, replaced by urgent conversations in a dozen alien languages. This is impossible, Krall hissed. Their ships weren't designed this way yesterday. They're using technology we've never seen before. The luminary moved closer to the viewing window. It appears we have underestimated the humans, Admiral. The exercise ended with the human fleet destroying 82% of the drones, shattering the previous record. As they exited the asteroid field, their ships transformed again, returning to their original configuration. Mason opened a channel to the conclave observers. Exercise complete. The United Earth Defense Force awaits your evaluation. Secretary Vex's voice sounded different now. There was a note of respect that hadn't been there before. An impressive performance, Commander Mason. The Conclave requests a technical briefing on the technology we just witnessed. Before Mason could respond, Admiral Krall cut in. How did you do that? No species we've encountered has ships that can reconfigure during combat. Mason allowed herself a small smile. As I said yesterday, Admiral, size isn't everything. After the stunning display in the asteroid field, Commander Mason and Chief Engineer Susan Wright found themselves in a large meeting room aboard the Conclave flagship. Representatives from 12 different alien species sat around a curved table, all eyes focused on the two humans. Secretary Vex stood at the head of the table. This technical briefing will allow our scientists to better understand Earth's contribution to the Conclave. He gestured to Susan. Engineer Wright, please explain this morphic hull technology we witnessed. Susan activated a small projector she had brought. A holographic image of the UES Defiant appeared, showing its transformation sequence. The fundamental problem with traditional spacecraft design is specialization, Susan began. Most ships are built for a specific purpose and environment, but humans have always believed in adaptability over specialization. A tall, spindly alien with 6 arms raised one of them. But the materials science required for such transformations, we've calculated it should be impossible. Susan smiled. Impossible with traditional metallurgy, yes. But we developed a carbon-silicon composite that maintains structural integrity while allowing component separation and reconnection. Admiral Krall, who had been unusually quiet, finally spoke. This technology would have military applications beyond what we saw today. Susan nodded. Of course. The demonstration was actually quite limited. Our ships can adopt many more configurations based on tactical needs. The questions continued for another hour. Susan answered some in detail, while deflecting others with diplomatic skill. Meanwhile, Commander Mason noticed something concerning. Several of the aliens were using devices that seemed to be scanning rather than recording. When the briefing ended, Mason and Susan returned to the Defiant. Admiral Richards was waiting for them. How did it go? He asked. Mason's expression was grim. They're impressed but also worried, and I'm almost certain the Zoraxians were trying to scan the detailed specifications of our technology. Richards nodded. We expected that. Are our countermeasures working? Susan checked her tablet. Yes, sir. We've detected 37 unauthorized scanning attempts in the last 3 hours. Our systems are feeding them incomplete or misleading data. Good, Richards said. Because we've just received details of the next exercise and it's much more challenging. He brought up a holographic display showing a simulation of a massive swarm of ships. This is a recreation of something they call the hive mind invasion. Apparently, it nearly wiped out 3 civilizations about a century ago. Mason studied the display. Those are thousands of ships. Richards nodded. The Zoraxians specifically requested this scenario. According to Secretary Vex, it requires overwhelming firepower to defeat. Susan looked troubled. They're trying to expose our weakness. Our fleet is too small to handle this many targets with conventional tactics. Mason's expression shifted to a smile. Then we won't use conventional tactics. Has anyone told the Conclave about our linked combat system? Richards shook his head. No, that's still our ace in the hole. Perfect, Mason said. When is the next exercise scheduled? Tomorrow morning, Richards replied. The Zoraxians are pushing for a quick timeline. I think they want to catch us off guard. Mason nodded. They won't. Susan, prepare the quantum entanglement field generators, and alert all ship captains that we'll be executing Formation Omega for this one. Susan's eyes widened. Formation Omega, are you sure? We've only tested it in simulations. I'm sure, Mason said firmly. It's time to show them what humanity is truly capable of. That evening, word spread through the Conclave fleet about the next day's exercise. Many alien species were placing bets on how the humans would perform. The Zoraxians were confident that the tiny human fleet would finally be exposed as inadequate. On his flagship, Admiral Krall met with his technical team. What did you learn from the scans? A Zoraxian scientist looked nervous. Very little, Admiral. Their countermeasures are unexpectedly sophisticated. We detected unusual energy signatures, but couldn't identify their source or purpose. Krall slammed his fist on the table. How is this possible? They're newcomers to interstellar travel. Their technology should be primitive compared to ours. The scientist hesitated before speaking. There is a theory, Admiral. We believe the humans may have developed along a different technological path than most species. Explain, Krall demanded. Most species discover faster-than-light travel before developing advanced materials science or quantum technologies. The humans appear to have done the opposite. Their FTL capabilities are basic, but their other technologies are creative in ways we hadn't considered. Krall paced the room. It doesn't matter. Tomorrow's exercise will prove that 7 small ships, no matter how adaptable, cannot stand against thousands of enemies. The Conclave will see that they are not ready for membership. Back on the Defiant, Mason couldn't sleep. She stood in the observation lounge, staring out at the alien armada surrounding them. The ships of the Conclave were massive, powerful, and numerous. Earth's fleet looked pathetically small in comparison, yet Mason felt a strange confidence. Throughout human history, smaller forces had defeated larger ones through innovation, strategy, and sheer determination. From ancient battles to modern conflicts, humans had always found ways to overcome superior numbers. A soft chime announced someone at the door. Enter, Mason called. Greg Hoffman stepped into the room. Sorry to disturb you, Commander. I saw the light was on. Can't sleep either? Mason asked. Greg shook his head. I've been running combat simulations for tomorrow. Even with our special capabilities, we're going to be pushing the limits. Mason nodded. I know, but remember what we're fighting for, Greg. This isn't just about joining some interstellar club. It's about ensuring humanity's future among the stars. She turned back to the window. If we fail tomorrow, the Zoraxians and others might decide Earth isn't worth respecting. And in this galaxy, respect seems to be the only thing preventing conquest. Greg stood beside her. We won't fail, Commander. The crew is ready. The ships are ready. He smiled slightly. And they still have no idea what's coming. Mason returned the smile. No, they don't. The next morning, thousands of spectator ships gathered around the designated exercise area. Word had spread about the humans' surprising performance in the first test, and no one wanted to miss what would happen next. Secretary Vex's voice came over the communication channel. Commander Mason, are you prepared for today's exercise? Mason sat straight in her command chair. We are, Secretary, Admiral Krall broke in. This simulation recreates the hive mind invasion of the Proxima sector. 3 species with technologies far more advanced than Earth's nearly perished facing this threat. It required the combined firepower of 5 Conclave fleets to defeat. Mason could hear the smugness in his voice. Thank you for the history lesson, Admiral. We've studied the briefing materials. Krall continued. The simulation will activate in 5 minutes. Your objective is simple survival. Previous new applicants averaged 12 minutes before their simulated fleets were overwhelmed. As the communication ended, Mason opened a channel to all Earth ships. This is Commander Mason. Prepare for Formation Omega on my mark. Deploy quantum entanglement field generators and prepare all hidden craft for launch. Admiral Richard's voice came through. Good hunting, Olivia. Show them what humans can do. Mason looked around at her bridge crew. Every face showed determination and focus. They had trained for this. They were ready. Begin countdown, she ordered. And may our ancestors watch over us today. The simulation began with a flash of light. Suddenly, the empty space around Earth's 7 ships was filled with thousands of simulated enemy vessels. The hive mind ships were small and fast, each about the size of a shuttlecraft. But they moved, in perfect coordination like a swarm of insects. Here they come, Greg announced from the tactical station. First wave approaching from 3 directions. Mason nodded. All ships, Maintain standard formation for 30 more seconds. Let them get closer. On the observation vessels, aliens from across the conclave watched with interest. Many were recording the exercise for later analysis. Admiral Krall stood with his arms crossed, a satisfied expression on his scaled face. "They're maintaining basics formation," he commented to Secretary Vex. "No transformation yet." The Luminary representative who had been present during the first exercise hummed thoughtfully. "Perhaps their technology has limitations we haven't considered." "Or perhaps," Krall said with a smirk, "they realize that fancy transformations won't help against these numbers." Back on the Defiant, Mason watched as the enemy swarm grew closer on the tactical display. The simulated hive mind ships were now close enough that they could be seen with the naked eye through the viewports. A cloud of metallic objects moving with unnatural precision. "Enemy weapons charging," Greg reported. "They'll be in firing range in 15 seconds. Mason took a deep breath. "All ships execute formation Omega. Now." What happened next astonished even those who had witnessed the previous day's transformation. The 7 human ships began moving toward each other. Instead of simply changing shape, they were coming together, their hulls separating and reconnecting in completely new configurations. The UES Defiant, the largest of the human vessels, moved to the center. The other 6 ships broke apart into smaller sections that attached themselves to the Defiant's hull, or formed independent but connected structures around it. Within 30 seconds, where there had been 7 separate ships, there was now one larger vessel surrounded by smaller craft that had detached during the transformation process. On the observation deck, Admiral Krall leaned forward in shock. "What are they doing? Their ships are combining?" The Luminary's crystalline body pulsed with light. "I believed I understood their technology yesterday. I was wrong." Secretary Vex stared at the tactical display. "The smaller objects, there are dozens of them. Were they hidden inside the original ships?" Aboard what was now effectively a combined Earth Fleet command vessel, Mason felt the difference immediately. The bridge had expanded as sections from other ships joined with the Defiant. Admiral Richards now stood beside her, having transferred from his ship during the combination process. "Quantum entanglement field at full power," Susan reported from an expanded engineering station. "All ships and craft are linked." Mason nodded. "Deploy the fighter screen. Execute attack pattern Delta." The smaller craft that had emerged during the transformation, fighters that had been hidden inside the human vessels, spread out in a protective formation around the combined command ship. Unlike traditional fighters, these small craft had no pilots. They were controlled directly through the quantum entanglement field, allowing for reaction times no organic pilot could match. "What is a quantum entanglement field?" one of the alien scientists on the observation deck asked. No one had an answer. The term was unfamiliar to the conclave species. The hive mind simulation attacked. Thousands of energy beams lanced toward the human formation. The observers expected to see the small Earth fleet quickly overwhelmed. Instead, something remarkable happened. The fighter screen moved with impossible precision, intercepting incoming fire. The combined command ship rotated sections of its hull to present the strongest armor to the attacks that got through. And all the human vessels, from the smallest fighter to the combined command ship, fired their weapons in perfect coordination. "Impossible," Admiral Krall whispered. "Their reaction time. It's faster than the hive mind itself." Inside the Defiant, the bridge crew worked with practiced efficiency. Through the quantum entanglement field, they could directly control not just their own stations but aspects of every vessel in the fleet. It was as if every crew member was simultaneously present on every ship. "Enemy swarm adapting," Greg reported. "They're targeting our fighters first." Mason nodded. "Reconfigure fighter formation Beta. Command ship, transform to defensive posture 3. The human vessels adjusted instantly. The fighters regrouped into tighter clusters that made them harder to target individually. The command ship's hull shifted again, creating interlocking armor plates where attacks were concentrated. On the tactical display, the simulated hive mind swarm was still vastly superior in numbers, but they were taking losses at an alarming rate. The human vessels moved with a level of coordination that matched or exceeded the hive mind itself. 15 minutes elapsed, Susan announced. We've already surpassed the average survival time for new applicants. Admiral Richards smiled. Let's show them we can do more than just survive. Target the hive mind central coordination nodes. Mason nodded. All weapons, focus fire on designated targets. The human fleet suddenly changed from defensive to offensive tactics. The fighters formed into attack wedges that punched through the enemy swarm. The command ship's weapons, far more powerful now that multiple vessel systems were combined, fired in synchronized patterns that created gaps in the enemy formations. On the observation deck, the aliens watched in stunned silence as the human fleet systematically tore apart a simulation that had been designed to be nearly unbeatable. 25 minutes, Secretary Vex noted, his voice filled with awe. And they're winning. Admiral Krall could hardly believe what he was seeing. How? How is this possible with only 7 ships? I don't think they have 7 ships anymore, the luminary observed. They have one unified fleet that thinks and acts as a single entity. Look at their coordination. It's beyond anything we've seen before. Inside the combined command vessel, Mason and her crew worked with focused intensity. Through the quantum entanglement field, every officer could instantly communicate with every part of the fleet. There was no delay, no miscommunication, no confusion. The entire Earth force functioned as a single organism with hundreds of parts. Central hive mind node located, Greg announced. Fighters have created a breach in their defensive screen. Mason nodded. All available weapons, target that node. Fire when ready. The command ship and nearby fighters unleashed a coordinated barrage that struck the simulated hive mind's central coordination node. The effect was immediate. The enemy swarm, suddenly bereft of unified control, began to break apart. Their movements became erratic, their attacks uncoordinated. 32 minutes elapsed, Susan reported. Enemy coordination failing. Their attack effectiveness is down by 60%. Admiral Richards turned to Mason with a smile. I think we've made our point. Should we finish this? Mason nodded. All units execute final attack pattern. Let's end this. The human fleet moved with devastating precision, methodically eliminating the remaining enemy forces. What had begun as an overwhelming swarm was reduced to scattered, disorganized groups that were quickly dispatched. When the last simulated hive mind vessel was destroyed, a chime sounded indicating the end of the exercise. The holographic enemy ships vanished, leaving only the human fleet floating in empty space. Secretary Vex's voice came over the communication channel, sounding distinctly shaken. Exercise complete. The Earth fleet had eliminated all simulated hive mind vessels in 38 minutes and 14 seconds. This is unprecedented. Mason allowed herself a small smile. The United Earth Defense Force stands ready for your evaluation, Secretary. There was a long pause before Admiral Krall's voice came through. Commander Mason, the Zoraxian Empire requests a private meeting with Earth representatives immediately. Mason glanced at Richards, who nodded slightly. We would be honored, Admiral, after our fleet returns to standard configuration. As the communication ended, the human vessels began the process of separating and returning to their original forms. The fighter craft docked with their parent ships. The quantum entanglement field powered down. Well, Richard said quietly, I think we got their attention. Mason's smile grew wider. Yes, sir, I believe we did. Commander Mason and Admiral Richard sat in a meeting room aboard the Conclave flagship. The walls were decorated with symbols representing the 17 member species. Across from them sat Admiral Krall and 2 other Zoraxian officers. Secretary Vex was also present, serving as a neutral mediator. Let me be direct, Krall began, his yellow eyes fixed on the humans. Your technology is unexpected. In 2 exercises, you've demonstrated capabilities that challenge our understanding of what's possible. Mason kept her expression neutral. Thank you, Admiral. It wasn't a compliment, Krall said, leaning forward. It was an observation, and it leads to an important question. Why would a species with your technological capabilities choose to build so few ships? Your tiny fleet makes no sense unless... He paused, eyes narrowing. unless what we've seen is only a fraction of Earth's true military power. Admiral Richards smiled slightly. We build what we need, Admiral. Quality over quantity has always been humanity's approach to defense. Secretary Vex raised a hand. The technical aspects of the human demonstration were impressive, but I'm more interested in the philosophical implications. The quantum entanglement field you used. It allowed your entire fleet to act as a single organism, correct? Mason nodded. Yes. Traditional command structures have delays and miscommunications. Our system eliminates those problems. But it also eliminates individual decision-making, one of the Zoraxian officers noted. Your smaller vessels had no independence. Actually, they did, Mason corrected. Our system doesn't override individual judgment. It enhances it by providing perfect information sharing. Every person in our fleet knows exactly what everyone else knows, instantly. Krall made a dismissive gesture. Regardless, the Conclave must now consider Earth's application for membership. The traditional tests have been passed, impressively so. Secretary Vex nodded. Indeed. I will convene the full council this evening for a vote. I see no reason why Earth should not be welcomed as the 18th species of the Galactic Conclave. The meeting continued for another hour, with the aliens asking detailed questions about Earth's history and culture. Mason and Richards answered honestly but carefully, sharing humanity's accomplishments, while not dwelling on its darker chapters. When they returned to the Defiant, the bridge crew was waiting anxiously. How did it go? Greg asked. Richards smiled. The Secretary believes we'll be voted in this evening. The Zoraxians are adjusting their assessment of humanity. Susan looked pleased. So they're not laughing at our tiny fleet anymore? No, Mason said. They're definitely not laughing now. Later that day, Mason stood in her dress uniform before the full Conclave Council. Representatives from all 17 member species sat in a grand chamber, with Secretary Vex presiding from a central position. The room fell silent as Vex stood to speak. Today we consider the application of humanity, represented by Earth, to join the Galactic Conclave as our 18th member species, Vex announced. As is tradition, they have demonstrated their military capabilities through standardized exercises. The results were exceptional. A murmur ran through the assembled aliens. Before we vote, Vex continued, does any member wish to speak regarding Earth's application? Admiral Krall rose from his seat. The chamber grew tense. Everyone knew the Zoraxians had opposed the admission of many species in the past. The Zoraxian Empire wishes to address the Council, Krall said formally. He turned to face Mason. When the human fleet first arrived, we laughed. Their vessels seemed tiny, primitive, inadequate. We were wrong. The admission surprised many in the chamber. In just 2 exercises, humanity has demonstrated technologies that none of us predicted. They approach problems differently than any species we've encountered. Their ships transform. They create unified consciousness through quantum fields. They build small but perfect, instead of large and adequate. Krall drew himself up to his full height. The Zoraxian Empire believes that the addition of humanity to the Conclave will strengthen us all. We vote to accept Earth's application for membership. One by one, the other species voted. All 17 voted to accept. Secretary Vex struck a ceremonial gong, its deep sound resonating through the chamber. It is decided, Vex announced. Earth is now the 18th member of the Galactic Conclave. Commander Mason, do you accept this invitation on behalf of humanity? Mason stepped forward. On behalf of every human on Earth and throughout our colonies, I accept with gratitude and hope for a peaceful future among the stars. The ceremony concluded with Mason receiving a symbolic key that represented Earth's new access to Conclave technology, resources, and protection. As the formal proceedings ended, various alien representatives approached Mason to offer congratulations. The day luminary floated toward her, its crystalline body glowing softly. Your demonstration has caused much discussion among my people, Commander. We had believed we understood the principles of fleet combat. Now we must reconsider. "We're happy to share our knowledge," Mason replied. "That's the value of the conclave, isn't it? The exchange of ideas?" "Indeed," the luminary hummed, "and humanity clearly has many ideas worth exploring." As Mason spoke with the various representatives, she noticed Admiral Krall standing alone near a viewport, looking out at the stars. She excused herself and approached him. "Admiral," she greeted, "your support was unexpected. Thank you." Krall turned to her. "It wasn't sentiment, Commander, it was strategy. The Xeraxian Empire has survived for 10,000 years by recognizing potential allies and potential threats." Mason raised an eyebrow. "And which are we?" "That remains to be seen," Krall replied. He hesitated, then continued. "There is something I must ask. Your quantum entanglement technology, your transforming ships, these are not developments that happen overnight. How did humanity advance so quickly in these areas?" Mason considered her answer carefully. "Earth has a complex history, Admiral. For most of it, we weren't united. Nations competed with each other, sometimes violently. That competition drove innovation at a pace that might seem unusual to more stable civilizations." Krall's eyes widened, slightly. "You developed these technologies fighting each other? And then adapted them when we finally united and looked to the stars," Mason confirmed. "Our small fleet isn't due to limited capability. It's a choice. We built exactly what we needed, no more, no less." The Admiral was silent for a moment. "Commander Mason, the Xeraxian Empire would like to propose a military exchange program. Some of our officers would serve on your vessels and some of yours on ours. We believe we have much to learn from each other." Mason smiled. "I think that can be arranged, Admiral." That night, as the Earth fleet prepared for the journey home, Mason stood on the observation deck of the Defiant. The ships of the Conclave surrounded them, no longer intimidating but now representing new allies and opportunities. Admiral Richards joined her. "Quite a day," he said. "Earth is now officially part of a galactic community." Mason nodded. "And we've earned their respect. Not bad for a tiny fleet." Richards laughed. "I almost feel sorry for Admiral Krall. He had no idea what he was getting into when he decided to mock us." "I don't think anyone in the Conclave will underestimate humans." "Again," Mason said. As they looked out at the stars, both officers thought about the future. Humanity had taken its first real step into the galactic community. They had proven themselves not through overwhelming force, but through innovation, efficiency, and the unique perspective that Earth's complex history had given them. The journey home would be long, but when they returned to Earth, they would bring news that humanity was no longer alone in the universe, and no longer needed to be afraid of what waited among the stars. The tiny fleet had made a big impression, and that was just the beginning.